She-Hulk coming to a close, all of the MCU Disney Plus shows from Phase 4 are done. There are no more coming. So, I figured it would be fun to sit down and rank all 8 Marvel Disney Plus shows from the worst to the best. Couple things to say before I actually get into it. Number 1, I am not including Werewolf by Night, because that's not a show. And I'm not including I Am Groot. I thought about it, but Disney doesn't even consider it a show. Each of the shorts are their own specific thing on Disney Plus. They're not piled together. And I don't know, it seems unfair to rank them in this. So I'm going to leave them out, but if you guys want to know, loved Werewolf by Night, might be the best Phase 4 thing that's thus far. And second, I Am Groot, friggin' slapped. I adored those little shorts. With all that out of the way, let's actually hop into the ranking of the Disney Plus shows.
Will not interfere. I guess I have to freestyle then.
I was so excited for What If, and that made it one of Marvel's greatest disappointments, in my opinion. This was such an interesting concept to me because, one, it was animated, and I don't actually hate the animation. It's definitely different, it's jarring, it's different than anything we've seen, but I didn't despise the animation. I love the concept. It was something completely different, and then they ended up botching it, in my opinion. It's a very weird quality difference between episodes of this show because the first episode, it's fun. It gets across the point of what the show's gonna be, but at the same time, it feels kind of surface level. It doesn't really feel like there's much there just besides this very baseline story. Episode 2, I'm sorry. I know it has a lot of fans, but I don't see any redeeming qualities in that episode besides Chadwick Boseman's amazing voice performance. Episode 3, I think, is a cool murder mystery, and episode 4, I still stand by the fact that it's the best episode of Marvel Disney Plus we've ever seen. Episode 5 would be great if they cut down on the jokes. Episode 6 was great up until the last third. Episode 7 is the single worst thing Marvel's ever put out, and I'm so confused as to why Thor is always in the worst shit. And then episode 8 was good, and episode 9 was very disappointing. It's such an interesting, it's like this. That's What If. It's a graph that just keeps doing this. So this show was something that was marketed on being 9 different anthology episodes that would all cover a different part of the MCU, change one aspect, and see how that affects sometimes not just that specific movie or storyline, but sometimes the entire universe. But they wanted to connect them together. And I think this is where the series really fell. If the 9th episode was just another anthology, if they took out the 9th episode and replaced it with that discarded Gamora and Tony Stark episode, this show would be higher on the list. But because they tried to tie it together, they were not able to introduce their main villain until episode 8. And these are short episodes. So basically, essentially what had to happen is in one episode, they had to introduce Infinity Ultron. They had to get the Watcher to bring all the Guardians of the Multiverse together. They had to defeat Infinity Ultron. All in like a 30-minute episode, if it was that long. And so Ultron in What If is a character who has successfully destroyed universes with ease. He just starts wiping them out. It's scary easy for him. But because they don't have the time to make him the threat they needed to make him when he's fighting these characters, what we end up getting is this dude who's more powerful than anything we've ever seen get his shit kicked in by 2 women with shields.
Give him all you've got. Don't give him a chance to think.
I just think this show would have been better if they didn't try to tie everything up, if they didn't try to connect everything. I didn't need to see T'Challa Star-Lord meet Party Thor. I didn't need to see Strange Supreme meet Captain Carter. I preferred them on their own. But for a show with so much potential for creativity, it doesn't feel that creative. It feels super surface level. And really, I only ended up enjoying about half of the episodes. And when it was over, I was kind of relieved it was over, because I got to the point where I felt like I was watching the episodes completely out of obligation and not because I wanted to watch them. If this show didn't have at least some very loose connection to the MCU, I don't think I would be coming back for more. But since I do this thing, I will be watching season 2, and I hope it's better.
We look damn good, though.
At number 7, we have The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I don't actually think this is my hottest take on the list, quite honestly. Falcon and the Winter Soldier is a show I really enjoyed as it was coming out, but now the more it ages and the more I think about it, the less desire I have to rewatch it, which is not a good thing, because a lot of the MCU stuff I love rewatching, but not Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Front and center, my biggest issue with this show is it accomplishes almost nothing. Yes, there's a lot of internal conflict, and there's obviously the political struggle that they were trying to do their little real world commentary, which I appreciate. Only issue is you have to mask that behind some other kind of importance to the story. Because at the end of Avengers Endgame, Steve Rogers gives the shield to Sam Wilson. Sam Wilson accepts the shield and says he'll do his best to be Captain America. He takes on the mantle at the end of Avengers Endgame. At the end of this show, he takes on the mantle of Captain America. Nothing changed.
How does it feel? Like it's someone else's. It isn't. Thank you. I'll do my best.
At all. The show ends. Sure, Falcon and Bucky go on some development, but if you skipped this show and just went straight into watching Captain America New World Order, I don't think you would be missing anything. It feels like the most inconsequential thing Marvel has put out. Just take it out of canon, nothing's different. Don't actually take it out of canon. Just if you took it out of canon, nothing would be different. Falcon's the exact same character at the end of this as he is at the end of Endgame. The much more compelling arc, in my opinion, was Bucky Barnes. And honestly, this whole show could have just been the Bucky show, because I feel like what they had to do with Bucky was more interesting than what they had to do with Sam. Bucky has been an assassin, a hitman, a friggin' Nazi, pretty much his entire life. And he's trying to finally get a chance to deal with that and be at peace and be free, as Ao says in the cold open of, I believe it's episode 4. But all this other stuff starts happening that doesn't let him feel better about himself. And his conflict with the Shield, honestly, better than Falcon's conflict with the Shield, because Bucky has this whole thing where Cap didn't pick him. Cap picked Falcon. Bucky's not upset that Cap didn't pick him. Bucky's aware of why it was that way. But what bothers Bucky is that now that Sam's not accepting this mantle, it makes Bucky feel betrayed, and it makes him feel like he was lesser and he doesn't believe in himself anymore, and it just takes your goddamn heart, pulls it out of your chest, stabs it, crushes it, throws it in the garbage, and then watches it get crushed by the compactor. But it's just a bummer because Falcon gets more to do in this series than Bucky. Bucky gets sidelined quite a lot for Falcon. Up until Ms. Marvel came out, this show easily had the worst villain. Carly Morgenthau is a whole lot of nothing. She is a character who had so much potential. And for some reason, they decided to take out all of that potential to devote an episode and a half to Sam and Bucky fixing a boat, which I'll talk more about in a minute. And it turned Carly into this one-note villain who they tried so hard to make sympathetic, but they didn't give her any reason to sympathize for her. They actually decided to end an episode with her blowing up a bunch of government officials, and right then I remember thinking, oh no, I'm supposed to be caring. And then in the last 5 minutes, they try to make you sad about her death. And Falcon carrying her back into the crowd is supposed to be this powerful emotional moment, but it's just not. Batman carrying the Joker out of Arkham and putting him on Jim Gordon's police car is 1,000 times more impactful than whatever this is. Now back to this boat thing, I understand what the boat is supposed to symbolize. I understand why it's here. My only issue is this is a storyline that requires more episodes. And this is a show, this should not be more episodes. They can keep the boat in there, just take some of it out. Some of it, we don't need, almost all of episode 5 was about this friggin' boat. Take most of that out, give some to Carly, first off, and we're smooth sailing. I've been saying for a long time, this is a mediocre 5-hour show that could have been cut down to an amazing 2.5-hour movie. Now, my favorite character in this is John Walker, and I think he's one of the best characters of the phase. Yes, Yelena's amazing, but John Walker has such a depth and complexity to him that I love in my characters, and that's what I get with John Walker, of the journey he goes on, and it's actually a very tragic story. Oh yeah, I didn't talk about Zemo. I understand his importance to the show. I know why he's here, but if you take him out, not much changes. And that purple mask was just in there for fan service. It was just in there for the trailer because he wore it for about a minute and then we never saw it again. And the fact that they basically made him royalty kind of detracts from his character in Civil War.
Hello.
I think I'm jealous. Is that what I'm feeling?
At number 6, we have the newest show, She-Hulk, Attorney at Law. I don't dislike the show as much as most people. In fact, I don't dislike this show at all. I think there is a lot to be liked in this show. Jennifer Walters is a cool character. I adore the journey she goes on. I enjoy her arc of being pissed that she now has this Hulk part of her, to being sad that everyone prefers that, and then to learning that there is a purpose for both Jennifer and She-Hulk that motivates her to put on her supersuit. It's a beautiful arc. For a show marketed to the brim and filled with cameos and a bunch of fan favorite characters like Wong and Daredevil and Abomination, and I'm not going to say Hulk because what they've done with Hulk in the MCU is quite frankly just disrespectful. They didn't take away from her story, they fueled it. I think Hulk has some of the best writing he's had in years. Not to say it's, what they should do with Hulk, but hey, I'll take good writing. And Daredevil is straight out of the Netflix show. My major issues with the show is that for a legal comedy, it has a shitty legal and subpar comedy. Some of the jokes were amusing, but there were only a couple moments that got a genuine laugh out loud from me. The main one being Daredevil's walk of shame, and Jessica Gao outed the entire writer's room the week this show came out and said that no one in the writer's room was good at writing courtroom scenes, and I don't know why you would ever say that. That's the worst press you could ever give your show, and the effect it had on my excitement at least was profound. And it's really funny that I guess they just didn't do their research, because some of the greatest shows ever created are legal shows, one of which being an incredible 3-season series about a character in this show. The lesson here is to hire writers who know how to write what you're hiring them for. And yes, I unashamedly love the finale of this show. It's weird that it takes a complete 180 on everything that had been established, and as I said in my review, if they just gave a bit more setup to the fact that she was eventually going to bust through Disney+, I think people would like it better. All in all, She-Hulk's not amazing, but I got exactly what I wanted from the show, which was just a fun little de-stressor from everything else. I wasn't looking for the next giant character drama. That's what Andor's for. That's what House of the Dragon's for. I was looking for something fun, and I got it in She-Hulk, which is why it's not further down on the list.
This is too dangerous. Definitely not this one.
You don't have to say definitely like that. Holy shit! There are arrows more dangerous than that one?
At number 5, we have Hawkeye. Hawkeye's very interesting. And I always struggle to figure out where I should put Hawkeye, if I should take it higher or take it lower. But I think this is the most middle of the road show, so it's going to rest right here. In terms of positives, I think Haley Steinfeld is the greatest piece of Marvel casting since Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. There is no one in this world better suited to play Kate Bishop than Haley Steinfeld. And her chemistry with Jeremy Renner is fantastic. I like how this show touches on the grief that Clint Barton feels. He has survivor's guilt. He firmly believes he should have been the one to die and Natasha should have been the one to live. And there's this, and they explore that in almost every episode of this show. And there's this great thing they do where they keep putting Clint in all these positions where he has to see Thanos was right. And a person he loved died to stop Thanos. And now he's stuck seeing Thanos was right graffiti. There's a Thanos was right mug he has to drink out of. And I think that's a great bit of storytelling that is so overlooked when people talk about this show. In terms of the story of this show, I have no clue what it is. There's a lot of plot lines going on, but I have no clue what the main one is. I have no clue what the main conflict of this show is. I do appreciate that it's small scale, but it starts out and it's like, oh, we have to clear this girl's name because it looks like, you know, she was the person who did this. And then it turns into this mystery over Kate's stepdad. And then there's the thing of, well, who's leading the Tracksuit Mafia? And then there's the hit on Clinton Barton that Yelena does. And there's the whole Echo thing. And there's a lot of plot lines. But what's the main one? I need to know. It's kind of important. The show does a mostly great job with its side characters. Jack was so clearly evil that it's obvious he was good. Yelena was better in this show than she was in Black Widow.
Kate Bishop. Hi.
And I actually really liked Echo. I don't know what they're going to do with her show, considering her story was wrapped up here. I don't know where they could go. They did her whole arc from villain to, I guess, kind of anti-hero and her revenge on Kingpin. I don't know where they're taking this character, quite frankly. And I don't know how they're just going to rehash it. Or are they just going to rehash it in her show? Like, where are they supposed to go from here with Maya Lopez? But hey, the Better Call Saul and the Daredevil writers are writing that show. So, I bet they're cooking something good. But easily the most disappointing thing in this show is Kingpin. What they did to this guy should be a felony. Kingpin's the greatest villain ever, I think, that we've seen in the MCU. And they took him and they reduced him down to pretty much nothing. And all he does in the finale is try to talk his way out of things, which isn't what Kingpin does. Kingpin commands the room. In this episode, Kingpin's just trying to, plead for his life. He gets hit by a car, shot by an arrow, blown up, and shot in the face.
Sometimes family doesn't see eye to eye.
And that's what Kingpin does in Hawkeye. That's what we waited 3 years for. I'm sure he would have been better if they didn't delete all the scenes exploring his character and his relationship with Kate's mom and his relationship with Maya, but the only issue is they cut all that out in favor of having a surprise twist that they didn't need to have. It would have been better storytelling if they just said, Kingpin's in the show.
Do you know what you are?
At number 4, coming into the top half, we have Miss Marvel. Talk about a series I was pleasantly surprised by. The trailer didn't do much for me. And I watched the first episode of the show, and I fell in love with the world of Kamala Khan. And Iman Vellani was born to play this character. She doesn't even have to act. She just is Miss Marvel in real life. I know that kind of didn't sound like a compliment, but trust me, it was a compliment. She is such a fan. I love it. She has a notebook of questions for Kevin Feige. Did you know that? So funny. The show's at its best when Kamala's in New Jersey doing her New Jersey stuff. When she's at school, when she's at the temple, when she's with her parents, when she's with her friends, when she's doing all that. I think this show, honestly, is a top 3, probably a top 2 Marvel show. The only issue is that's not the whole show. Because every one of those people are standouts. Bruno, Nakia, Zoe, the friggin' Euro guy, Kamala's parents. They're all part of this big happy family type thing. But then the show segues, after episode 3, it segues into something completely different. And Kamala goes to Pakistan, and there's time travel, and there's flashbacks to a very, very adult-oriented drama set during partition. And you realize you're watching a completely different show. This feels like it should be a season 2. It does not feel like it should be part of this. It feels like season 1 should have just been episodes 1, 2, and 6. And 3, 4, and 5 should have been season 2. And then there's the 2 villains of this show. There's Damage Control, who I actually prefer because I think they fit better with the vibe that this show had early on. This ain't some world-ending thing. This is just Damage Control trying to bring in this possibly very powerful girl and kind of screwing over her community in the process, and she has to deal with that. That's the Miss Marvel I love. Or the Miss Marvel show I love. And then there is a group of, I guess, dimension-crossing people who want to completely destroy the world, and they need Miss Marvel's bangle to do it, and I honestly couldn't tell you what the hell this plotline is, and I challenge you, without looking it up, to tell me what the name of the main villain is, because you cannot. She is so awful, she's unmemorable, and quite honestly, I think she's the worst villain the MCU has. And I am aware that this dude is canon. If the finale didn't knock it out of the park, this would be much lower. But I loved the finale from beginning to end. It hits all the emotional beats, it hits the humor beats, it hits the dramatic beats, and it left me very satisfied and excited to see more of Kamala Khan.
This is our home.
Then let's fight for it.
Coming in to the top 3, we have WandaVision. I feel like this might be my hottest take because everyone says WandaVision's like number 1 or number 2. It's a bit lower for me for some reasons, but let's start off by talking about the good of WandaVision. I do want to emphasize, I love almost all of this show. It's something so completely different for Marvel. Something I was hooked on from the second of the first episode up until almost the last seconds of the finale. And every time it went to please stand by, I wanted to pick up a Wii remote and throw it through my screen. The creepy messages kind of bleeding through the walls of Westview, just having you have just a mind melt and be like, the hell is happening? Those were great. I think the writing that we got for Wanda Maximoff, as well as the writing we got for Vision, was stellar. Are we getting the same writers on the Vision show that they just announced? Well, they didn't announce it, but it's like they're doing it. I kind of hope we do, because they wrote Vision well. One of the greatest lines in television history with what is grief if not love persevering, what this show does for Billy and Tommy, what this show does for Monica Rambeau, what it does for, it gives me Jimmy Woo back, thank God, and it made Darcy not super annoying. I mentioned it a few seconds ago, but I just need to emphasize that Wanda's character writing in this show is some of the better character writing that the MCU has seen. And if she wasn't one of my favorite characters before, she certainly is now. And I will die on the hill that Multiverse of Madness did not completely screw up her character arc in this. If anything, it adds to it, but that's a story for a different time. Now you might be wondering, since I'm praising so many things, what did I not like? Well, strap in for this. Yeah, so my camera died. Anyway, back into this. This show has a lot of plot holes and unanswered questions that, quite frankly, bother me every time I watch it. Alright? So I'm gonna rattle off the ones I can just think of off the top of my head that annoy me. Why did the cop say Westview doesn't exist when it clearly did? Who was Jimmy Woo's person of interest? Why did Wanda question Pietro's accent but not his look? Vision said there are no children in Westview. One episode later, there are a lot of children in Westview. How did that happen? What happened to the guy who climbed out of the sewer? How did Wanda, who very clearly didn't have a clue that she was in a fake world, at least early on, know that she could expand the hex and knew exactly where the border was? Those are just the few that bother me when I watch the show. I'm sure I can think of more. But yes, this show has some unanswered stuff. Also, the villains in this show are, like, really bad. Director Dick Wad Hayward, as I call him, had the potential to be somewhat deep, but they just decided to have him try to assassinate a child in the last episode, and they didn't really do anything with him beyond, I want Wanda's powers, which is the exact same thing Agatha Harkness wants, and I am sorry to all you Agatha fans, she's an awful villain. She's a horrible villain. The only thing that makes her memorable is Catherine Hahn. So shout out to Catherine Hahn for being a genius. Also, I don't love the finale. Like, actually, it might be the worst episode of the show. It's grown on me as time goes on, but it just bothers me that a show so different from everything Marvel has done ends in the same way as everything Marvel has done. Bringing us into the top 2. Anyone who follows my channel is going to be surprised by this. But bringing us into the top 2. We have this.
Embrace the chaos.
It finally happened. Moon Knight finally dropped from my number 1. It was very hard for me to move it, but as I was writing this up, it was actually at number 1. And as I wrote it up, I realized I had more complaints than I did for my number 1, so I shifted it down. But it was hard. It was really hard for me to do, because I absolutely adore this series. I think Oscar Isaac gave one of the best performances the MCU has seen, quite possibly the best, at least mainline MCU. I'm sure if you go into the Netflix stuff, you can find better performances. Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin, but as far as main Infinity Saga, Multiverse Saga stuff, I think Oscar Isaac may have top 3 greatest performances in the franchise. And he has to play 2 characters, and he plays them so differently that you can tell, you can see the moment in the shot when it changes from Mark to Steven or from Steven to Mark. And the journey these 2 characters go on, the character study they're thrown into, I think absolutely incredible. Now Layla, amazing. I love Layla. She's great, but she's underutilized. I think they could have used her more. And I love that she becomes a superhero at the end and kind of the meaning behind that and how powerful it is. And she kicks ass. It is kind of confusing that she's the avatar of the hippo god, but she has wings. And Arthur Harrow is, in my opinion, a very strong villain. Is he the best villain? Hell no. Is he an S-tier villain? No. But I think he works. I wish they had done more with him beyond just his initial motivation, but Ethan Hawke really does what he can, and he elevates Arthur Harrow to a very memorable status. Also, I don't think people talk enough about the fact we got Oscar Isaac and Ethan Hawke both in the same Marvel series. The story's heartbreaking and deep. It raises a lot of questions. It's a phenomenal character study, in my opinion. It does the drama well, the emotion well, the humor well, the action-adventure side of it I think it handles well. The tone kind of shifts between episodes, not really something that ever bothered me. But my only issue comes from the 6-episode format. In my opinion, the story of the show's an A+. The story of the show's one of the best stories we've seen since Iron Man. I've been saying that, I'm going to continue to say that. I love the story of Moon Knight, but this format hinders it. This show needed more than 6 episodes. It needed at least 8 episodes. Hell, actually, I think they should have given this one 9. They should have switched the amount of episodes this and She-Hulk had, because She-Hulk didn't need as much, and this needed more. I love the finale. I'm one of the few people who thinks the kaiju fight at the base of the Great Pyramid while Moon Knight and Hera were fighting, I love it. I eat it up. Beautiful. But the finale, honestly, probably could have been 2 episodes. I think we needed just a bit more to explore there that we weren't able to get because they had to cram it in. And no, I don't take issue with the final battle not being shown. I actually think it works for the way they're telling this story. It also leaves a mystery, a bit of an open end going into whatever future Moon Knight stories there are. I don't think everything needs to be perfectly wrapped up, tied off with a bow. That's my thing on the finale. I don't want to get fully into it because we'd be here forever. But bringing us into number 1. Loki is amazing. I thoroughly enjoyed Loki. Of all the shows on this list, Loki's the one I was least excited for. On the list of the anti-Loki show club, I was on that side going in. I was so happy with how Loki's story ended in Infinity War, and I was like, can Marvel please just let the character rest? Let's stop milking him. Granted, I do want them to still let the character rest, but I mean, come on, this show is so good. I love that one of the things I was most excited for was my least favorite, and the thing I was least excited for was my most favorite. Poetry. The journey they send Loki on is, in my opinion, very underrated. I've rewatched Loki. I think I've seen the whole show 3 times now. When it first came out, I rewatched with my parents, and I watched it for Multiverse of Madness, which is something I didn't need to do. Well, actually I kind of did, but not really. I don't think so. But so I've seen the series through 3 times, and every time I find myself appreciating Loki and Sylvie's storyline that much more. This is also just a great time to plug. I'm not a Michael Waldron hater. I think he wrote Wanda, Doctor Strange, and Loki very well. And this show has the best side characters. I mean, Mobius, played by Owen Wilson, is so precious. The way he doesn't get a jet ski at the end of the series, we're heartbroken. Hunter B-15, a character they did not need to give depth to, has so much depth and became one of the best characters at the end of the show. And I'm not a Sylvie hater. I really liked Sylvie. Sure, she's self-centered and makes a lot of mistakes and does without thinking, but what people don't realize is how well that contrasts with where Loki's at. Because Sylvie is essentially what Loki was, and Loki wants to be something else. And him having to stop Sylvie at the end is him having to stop that part of himself. One of the main criticisms I tend to hear with this show is that the first half is this really cool psychological thriller kind of, trying to unravel the mystery of the TVA and what's going on, and then the second half turns into a manhunt for He Who Remains. I can understand where you're coming from if you think that, but for me, that always worked. That was the natural progression of the show, and the moment it changes is just subtle enough that it doesn't take you out of it. I almost forgot to mention Richard E. Grant as classic Loki. What a character, what an arc. I'll settle for a classic Loki spin-off if we're, making more spin-offs of shows. And I actually really enjoy that we just see variants of Loki as opposed to all these cameos. It's one of the things I like in Multiverse of Madness also. I think, in my opinion, different characters interacting with different versions of themselves trumps a bunch of just cameos. It's a strong point in this. It's a strong point in Multiverse of Madness. And this show has the best finale of any of these, of Loki and Sylvie finally getting to He Who Remains Citadel, and they talk with He Who Remains, played by Jonathan Majors, and the final fight, it's not even a fight, it's just a conversation about right versus wrong, and the future, and the multiverse, and what happens if Sylvie were to do the one thing that He Who Remains really thinks she's gonna do, and kind of wants her to do. And the fight is just Loki trying to get her to not fight before she stabs him and unravels the entire multiverse. It's so different, it's so interesting, it's so unique, and what's funny is on paper the finale's really boring. They get to a building and they talk for half an hour. But Jonathan Majors does so well as He Who Remains that he makes it exciting. And the music! Oh my god, the music. Natalie Holt, great job on the music for this. It's also worth noting this is the only show that has not suffered from the format issue yet. The 9-episode seasons usually felt too long, like they could have been the 6-episode seasons. And then for the 6-episode seasons, you either ran into an issue where it should have been 2 seasons, like Miss Marvel and Moon Knight, or you run into an issue where it should have just been a movie, like Hawkeye and the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Loki's the first show where I feel like the length it is the exact length it needs to be. And that's one of the reasons that it is number 1 on this list. Well, there you guys go. That is my ranking of all the MCU Disney Plus shows. What's your ranking, and what do you think of mine? Be civil. It'll be fun. But let me know all that down in the comments below. Also leave a like on this video, subscribe, click on the bell icon to receive all notifications from the MCU HQ. That's going to be it. Have a great day, guys.